You know how this shit work. You know what time it is. Streets need a body.
So we've seen the first big death of season 4, and it just simply had to be at the hands of Unique. He got rid of Andre Barnes at the end of 402, and even though this wasn't a major character in terms of the overall story, he still played a very important role for Rock. He was their go-to in a lot of sticky situations when it came to the law. We know Ghost had Joe Proctor back in Power Book 2 Ghost. Tariq and the Tejadas had Davis McLean. In Power Book 4 Force, Tommy's also got himself a lawyer who also has a lot of connections. These type of lawyers for the drug dealers in Power, and in any kind of crime show, is super important. Sometimes it is all on them, whether you stay in or out of jail. So the first kill in Raising Kanan may not have been a major character as such, but this death is going to have huge implications, mainly for Rock and the Thomases. But what about for the rest of Season 4? We know we're not done with just Andre Barnes. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down some of the death predictions now that we've got a lay of the land after the first official episode of Season 4 in the current timeline. We've also got Kanan at someone's grave, which I think can only be one of 3 characters: Detective Howard, his grandmother Joyce Thomas, or his best friend, Famous. We've already touched on the topic of Famous last week, and we're definitely going to be looking at a new theory or 2 when it comes to Famous and a few more. I'm also going to touch on who could potentially end up in jail and why. So this definitely is going to be a fun one to unpack, and I think there's no better place to start than Unique's next set of kills.
I forgot about me real fucking fast.
Now, Richard and Sonny are 2 characters I mentioned before episode 402. I did think they would be high up on Unique's hit list, as well as Andre Barnes, but he went for Rock's lawyer first. It doesn't mean he's forgotten about Richard and Sonny. Now, I think this one is pretty obvious based on what we've seen in the trailer for episode 3. They've made no secret. Unique's next move is going to be Richard and Sonny, who run this Chinese restaurant, which, to be honest with you guys, is quite harsh. These guys are just regular civilians. They're just a front for Rock's operation and had nothing to do with Unique being attacked by Ronnie. They didn't even conspire against Unique or go behind his back. They were just doing what they were told. Unfortunately, we know the world that we live in Power. Civilians are always going to be caught in the crossfire, and I do think it is goodbye to both Richard and Sonny in 402. Now, the impact of this death won't be as much as Andre, but it definitely will start to make Rock ask some questions, some major questions in terms of who's hitting our operation, and that's what I'm really looking forward to. How does Rock react, and which direction does she look in? The Chinese restaurants will be cordoned off in 403, and I'm sure word will get back to Marvin and Rock. So let's see how they deal with Andre's death, and then everything that happens at the Chinese restaurant. However, I think we all know this won't be Unique's last kill. He's going to be going on a crazy killing spree in Season 4, and the next one I have on my list is Early Tyler.
When the dog finally regained consciousness, he turned vicious. Gave one of my nurses stitches. We had to put him down.
Now with Early Tyler, he is said to be a neighborhood institution. He's good to have in your corner, but only if you can afford the high financial price of his friendship. And that's the thing when it comes to Early Tyler. He's all about the green. We know Unique will be paying him back, but I really don't believe we've seen the last of Early Tyler. I don't think we've seen the last of his influence. This is a character who is known to the Thomases. Marvin mentioned him way back in Season 1 when they wanted to move their stash to Early Tyler's. He said he was thinking about opening up an exotic fish store, although that never transpired. But he is still known to the Thomases. He's a neighborhood institution. So I do wonder if there comes a moment in Season 4 where he does get approached by Rock, where she puts a briefcase on his desk full of cash. Where will his loyalties lie? We've seen her do it before in Season 1, when she was having this war with Unique. She approached Smurf, who was one of Dean's bodyguards. She offered him a lot of cash to give up Unique's re-up. So we have seen her do it before, and I really wouldn't be surprised to see her do it once again. The thing is with Rock, I mentioned it in my breakdown for 402. What Rock wants, she does normally get. And even if Early Tyler were to refuse, she would still find a way. Now if this were to happen, or even if it wasn't, I still feel Early Tyler is in huge danger. The doctor already gave the warning with what happened with the German Shepherd. He woke up, turned vicious, and started to attack. And is that a foreshadow of Unique turning on Early Tyler a bit later on? So I am putting Early Tyler on my death predictions, as well as Richard and Sonny at the hands of Unique. But let's move on to Traymon. Now Traymon is someone who we have discussed before, so we are going to keep this chapter pretty short, sweet, and to the point. He betrayed Rock and Marvin towards the end of Season 2 by going behind their back directly to the source, which at the time were Juliana and the Colombians. Based on what we've seen before in terms of Unique attacking her operation, I really wouldn't be surprised if Rock is looking in a few different directions and comes to the conclusion it could be Traymon. Either way, however it happens, Traymon is definitely going to be out of here. Every season, what I also look forward to is Rock flipping a switch when she gives them kind of speeches. So you guys know what I mean. And I'm sure we're going to hear one just before she pulls the trigger on Traymon, and definitely a few more across season 4. So besides Traymon, Rock giving these classic Rock speeches definitely is something I look forward to in any new season of Raising Kanan. I think the war of words with Snaps and Pop in season 3 is probably my favourite out the lot. But over to Joyce Thomas. Now, I really can't remember if Joyce is someone we spoke about before season 4. I really don't think we did. But after 401, I do think it is a given. Joyce Thomas is probably going to die from her kidney cancer. In 402, her and Kanan went to the doctor where he mentioned chemotherapy wasn't really going to be an option for someone in Joyce's stage. Chemotherapy would probably do more harm than good. So unfortunately, it really is only a matter of time. Now with this one, I do think they've started to plant the seed early as season 1 in terms of the lack of relationship between Joyce and her kids. It's never really been in a good place. We've also seen the interaction or two between Joyce and Lou, and that was also the same. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think the only sibling we haven't seen her interact with is Marvin. I don't know whether there's a specific reason why they haven't done so, but just an observation. Now the history with Elijah Thomas is something I think plays a huge role in what happened in the past. It affected everybody in a different way, but we still haven't heard Rock's point of view, and I don't know whether they're saving that for a conversation between Joyce and Rock. There's a few ways they could definitely go with this one, but I do think eventually they are going to have to face the music. You can tell a lot of them have got a lot to get off their chest. They've been keeping a lot of secrets from one another, and I do think at some point in season 4, just before it is time for Joyce, they have to have that conversation where we learn more about the history of the Thomases. It's a video that I've definitely been keeping on the back burner because I do think we have to learn more, and when we do, I do think it will be the perfect time to dissect it in a lot more detail. But it could also explain why we saw Rock in tears, why we see Kanan as someone's grave, and it may even potentially make Rock regret the choice she made in terms of terminating her pregnancy. Just a thought. So definitely Joyce Thomas, I do think she will go, which in turn will allow us to finally see them having this open conversation where we will learn more about the Thomases. But let's move over to Crystal. Now on Crystal, I mentioned in my breakdown for Jukebox, when they start to give a lot more screen time to characters in and around the Thomases, when they start introducing love interests such as Crystal for Kanan, Imani Okoye for Lou, or Jukebox's new love interest who I don't believe we have a name for just yet, I start thinking, where are they going with this one? What's the purpose? Because we know nothing will happen to Kanan and Jukebox. But what about the other love interests? How do you harden these characters even more? We know Jukebox has already lost Nicole. I don't know whether they'd run with the same storyline once again. That's why I mentioned maybe this time around she may be betrayed. Or maybe there's a hidden agenda with her love interest. But for Kanan, I still feel as if he still needs to feel a lot more hurt and potentially lose a lot more loved ones, just like Jukebox has. And Crystal could be someone that Kanan could lose in season 4. So that's just a thought around Crystal. But let's move on to Sean, famous Figueroa. Now this is one which we've definitely questioned before 402. I just thought something just doesn't add up. I literally titled my breakdown, something just doesn't add up. Because there's no media work done by Antonio Ortiz. He wasn't in any of the teasers or trailers apart from one. His name is no longer in the credits. He's not seen in any of the posters. Well, in episode 2, we did hear Marvin mention he was talking and then got to running. Lou said Famous isn't a snitch, so which one is it? Did Famous snitch or not? Now you do have to wonder, law enforcement had him dead to rights when it came to Freddie Williams' murder. They had the murder weapon, and they also had an incident report which placed him at the scene of the crime at the exact moment. So why would they let him go if they had him dead to rights? Did he talk? Potentially. We still don't know for sure, but maybe he did. Now the best theory I've heard in regards to this Famous situation, which was one of my regulars in the comment section, Mad Chicken, he mentioned that Famous is dead. But what if he's actually already been killed by Marvin, and they show this in a flashback? The more I think about this theory, the more it genuinely makes sense. There was a 2-month period between episode 310 and 402, so maybe he was killed during that period. Maybe we won't learn about it, or maybe we won't see this until a bit later on, which could very well be in a flashback. I do think Famous is out of here regardless. I just hope it isn't an off-screen death where we don't get to see it. But either way, I do think the end is near for Famous, which could potentially set up a lot of tension between Kanan, Marvin and Rock. If Marvin did pull the trigger, it wouldn't have been without Rock say so, and that would be the second friend she's given the order to kill. First D-Wiz, and then Famous. So I do think we will get the answers at some point in season 4, or at least I really hope so. I think we're probably going to have to be a little patient, but the answers will eventually come. I just hope it's not an off-screen death. Now, while we're on the topic of Marvin, I've really thought a lot about what the fate of Marvin could be come the end of Season 4. I've said it before, I don't think he is a character who will die in Season 4. I do think he will make it to Season 5. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does end up in jail. Maybe because of one of these side missions he's doing for Stefano. Maybe one of them goes wrong, or maybe Stefano throws him under the bus. Andre is no longer here, so they've now lost a very crucial chess piece. Someone who had various connections within the Bureau and within law enforcement. So going forward, now they have no idea what law enforcement are up to or who they have in their sights. So Marvin could very well end up on their radar once again. And if Marvin were to go to prison, if he were to do a short stint in jail, it really would leave Rock isolated more than ever before. Everything around her would really crumble, leaving her isolated. That's potentially what may even force Lou back in. So that's just a wildcard prediction. You guys know I love throwing a little wildcard prediction. Whether it's right or wrong, sometimes they do actually hit, like the one with Rock's pregnancy. But I'm sure we'll definitely come back around to this one later in Season 4, so definitely one just to keep in the back of your minds. Now elsewhere, just before we wrap up, I wouldn't say Garcia is high up on my death predictions, but I do think he is in danger. He's on very thin ice because no doubt, he is going to continue to ruffle the feathers of the players in Queens, just like Detective Burke. It's just about how far does he dig, what will he learn, just how much of a problem will he really be. I think we'll only start to know a bit later on, which may give us the answers in terms of, is he staying or is he going? But that's a breakdown of some death predictions now that we've seen episode 402, which does give us a bit more of a clear picture of where we are in terms of the current timeline. I do think it's going to be a very bloody Season 4, and I do think one of the major deaths this season will be famous, and who knows whether they've got another surprise in store. But the floor is now yours. Drop all your thoughts and predictions down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.